Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Ricecast. My name is Anthony Russo, and I am sitting here across the table from the doctor, the pastor, Willie Rice. Pastor Willie, how are you today?
Doing great, thanks.
We are rolling through our Revelation series right now here at Calvary. Pastor, what are we, 3-4 weeks in at this point?
It seems like it, something like that. And I know we're this week. Sometimes we've communicated for those wanting to read ahead. We're trying to cover larger sections than sometimes we do in messages, but Revelation 10 and 11 this week. And they're among the hardest chapters to interpret and commentate on and preach from in the book of Revelation, maybe in the entire Bible. I mean, they are very, very challenging. A lot of imagery that's tough to understand, and maybe none harder than Revelation 11. So anyway, we're there this week, but it's still a great passage. It's going to be a fun week, and just appreciate so many good comments as we walk through this.
Yeah, it was a powerful message last Sunday. Got a lot of feedback from that. If you missed it, as always, we'll put it in the podcast description. If you missed any of the sermons so far in this series, you can get caught up on all of that on our YouTube channel, our sermon archive. We'd love for you to do that. I also want to drop this in here just because I think it's we're getting back into rhythms in the new year. Our Wednesday nights on campuses. If you haven't been a part of a Wednesday night, we have a prayer meeting at 6 o'clock, right, at every campus?
Yep, it's a great time. It's 6 o'clock, and I believe every campus is still doing that. I know here at the Clearwater campus, I'm often involved in that. Pastor Mike Heshe is also involved in that. And I can just tell you, it seems to be growing. You know, I know some people can't get here at 6, and it's not an extraordinarily long time, but from 6 to 6:30, we have a prayer time, and it kind of do different stations every week. And I can just tell you, though, it seems to be growing. We had a beautiful time of prayer last week. It was right as the Ukrainian crisis was hitting, and it just seemed like it was just, I was so grateful to be able to do it. It's like 30 minutes of an oasis in the midst of everything else going on. A lot of our classes on Wednesday night, we have a lot of Bible classes and discipleship training classes, as well as some of our Bible study community groups. So we got a lot of activity on Wednesday night, but right before it all hits, 6 to 6:30, you're welcome to join us. And the bigger picture Wednesday night, it's great to see. You know, the pandemic kind of hit a lot of things, and for a while, Wednesday night kind of got decimated with all the kids and children's ministries. But it's great to see it coming back. I don't know if that's back to normal yet, but it's great to see people involved, learning, growing, involved in various ministries. But yes, if you want to be a part of a prayer time at Calvary, just corporate prayer where we're praying for all kinds of things. Wednesdays at 6 o'clock. There'll be signs. Here at the Clearwater campus, it's in the choir chapel area. I think the other campuses would be fairly easy to find. And 6 to 6:30, beautiful time of prayer.
Yeah. Hard to imagine something better or more helpful for your mental and spiritual health than to just pause in the middle of the week, because we know how busy everybody is.
It really is. And I know, when people say, well, I don't have time to pray. Listen, you don't have time not to pray. You just have to kind of build it in. We've talked about prayer on here before. You got to build it into your schedule personally. But I think we've learned, and we're still learning. I'm not suggesting we're there, but we've got to build it into our schedule corporately. And I think through the years, maybe that suffered. We didn't do that as well as we should have, frankly, and probably need to do more than we're doing. But this is a beautiful time to just call people to prayer. And it's not, we don't spend time talking about praying. You've been to prayer meetings like that. You spend time talking about praying. Right. And it's not just listing physical needs, although we do at times pray for those who are sick. But that's just one type of prayer. We pray using the Lord's Prayer as our guide, and it allows us to pray for different things, different weeks, and really keep our focus on the Lord and His kingdom and His will. And so, again, if you're able to come on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock, join us for a time of prayer.
Yeah. And you mentioned this before. Going into this podcast, we knew kind of what we wanted to talk about, and it's going to be the subject we stay on. But you mentioned praying for the crisis in Ukraine, and I know that was on I mean, you mentioned it here at Clearwater if you were joining us online, but it was especially stark when you gather for worship and you just these freedoms you take for granted, and these things you take for granted, and you're hearing stories from our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. And I think all of us felt that on Sunday, especially that here we are. We did some baptisms here at Clearwater. We're just very publicly able to worship together, practice together with just no fear for our immediate safety. And in that same moment, you just knew in this other part of the world what they were going through. What were those as you watched that unfold? I guess at the end of last week, what were some of the first thoughts, emotions?
Well, I read a tweet Sunday morning that hit me. I think I didn't see it till Saturday, but it was a pastor. I don't know the pastor, but he was corresponding with another pastor in Ukraine, and the pastor was saying, "Hey, I'm studying." And they're ahead of us, of course, in the hour, so they were further into the day. And he said, "I'm studying for my message tomorrow, and we're going to gather, and I'll preach if we have a building." And it was just that matter of fact. If our church is still standing, we'll be having church tomorrow. And the reality is, if it wasn't standing, it probably would have anyway, just somewhere else. Right. It's like you can't stop the church. You can, I'm not minimizing the pain and suffering of those people or the devastation of war. Not at all. It's completely devastating. But you cannot stop the gospel. You cannot stop the church. And there are Ukrainian believers who are, right in harm's way. And, one of the ways I pray is to pray for them. To pray for the Ukrainian church to be strong, to be bold, to share hope in Christ in the midst of this crisis.
And I know, even for me, being I'm 33 now, I had to do that math quick. War is I'm very not familiar with it. You think about the war on terror that we all kind of went through, which was a very different kind of thing. I mean, it wasn't like a nation against a nation. Right. It wasn't an invasion, a formal invasion. Right. There's lots of thoughts and opinions on that, but not to get into that. I'm just saying this type of a country is invading another country. So I think if it hasn't hit you yet, it's probably worthwhile even just to really think on what all that means to them as a people. Because for us, it's, I think I'm very grateful that that's not something that's been my reality. And you had even mentioned a couple of weeks in a sermon a couple of weeks prior that there has been war going on. I mean, there's conflict all over. But this very public thing, I do think it's worthwhile, and we did it on Sunday, to pause and just think about what's going on over there, what they're going through, and you pray for them. I mean, sincerely. Yeah,
and one of the things, though, the last time something compatible to this happened, and as you said, the war on terror is a very different kind of thing, because it wasn't a state, entity fighting states, what made it unusual. Probably the last time this happened would have been in the 90s, the Gulf War, under President Bush Sr. Yeah. And when, let me get my countries right, Iraq invaded Kuwait. And that would have been, I would have been a young man at that time, a little younger than you are now, late 20s when that happened. And that was the last time I saw like this global mobilization for war. And honestly, what happened with the war on terror a decade to a decade and a half later was in some ways still kind of connected to that. Not exactly, but there were a lot of fingers that connect. So bottom line, it's been a long time since Americans have paid this much attention and have seen a country invade another country. Been a lot of civil war, a lot of internal unrest in countries, some of which that we pay more attention to than others. But in countries like this, this has been, but it's not uncommon. It's been a while, but it's not uncommon in the span of human history. This is human history. There are wars and there are rumors of wars. Jesus, we've talked about this in this Revelation series. That doesn't mean you're at the end of time. Right. This is the birth pains. This is the story of human history, that wars and rumors of wars happen. Now, there is a element that's connected to end times, but that's as labor pains increase and intensify. But just having a war doesn't mean the end of the world is about to happen. Right. But, on the other hand, this is very concerning because this is even when Iraq invaded Kuwait, you weren't dealing with nuclear weapons. You weren't dealing with people who got weapons that could inflict mass destruction. With Russia, you certainly are. Yeah, and it's very unnerving to people. I understand why they're anxious. I understand why they're prayerful. I understand why we're just really paying attention to this. This is a true crisis, and everyone wants to know: is this going to somehow diffuse and settle down,
Yeah.
or is this going to escalate into a greater crisis? And we don't know that right now.
Right. I guess one thing a lot of people would be asking, we shared a prayer guide this weekend. Hopefully you got it if you were at one of our campuses or with us online. But for you personally, how are you praying for the people of Ukraine in these last couple of days and weeks? How have you been praying for them?
Well, I pray for churches, and some of the churches I know. It's been a while since I've been to the Ukraine. I don't know, 15 years or so. And let me just stop there and talk about this if I can. Calvary had a long history with the Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
When I became the pastor of Calvary back in 2004, probably the biggest mission connection going on, I mean, we're obviously through our cooperative network, we're involved in missions around the world, but the biggest mission that Calvary was personally involved in would have been the Ukraine. We had a man back before I got here who was very involved. He had a Ukrainian background, and in some ways through his connections, we had a number of people who were very involved in the Ukraine. So it wasn't uncommon during 2004 or 5 to about 2010. You'd be walking around here. There's 100 people that have been to Ukraine.
Yeah.
There are people going to the Ukraine. People who had been back, and people who had been over the last decade there. Choirs had been. We had done crusades there. A lot of things have been done in the Ukraine. I went, a year or two into my ministry here with a guy named Jim Todd, who's passed away a few years ago, but loved Jim. And Jim got, on fire for the Ukraine one of those trips, and he kept going back. And so one of our trips there, I went with him for a while and toured around, which was a riot. If you knew Jim, it was incredible. I mean, he would witness to everything. Jim was one of those laymen. He wasn't a pastor, he was a layman.
Yeah.
But he was a preacher, I promise you, because Jim would witness to everything. Jim was one of those guys, if you saw something going on in the street and somebody was doing a show,
yeah,
and you're like, oh, that was a good show. Where's Jim? And he's witnessing to the guy who just did the show. He's over there going, hey, brother, do you know Jesus? And that's who Jim was. Jim wanted to go door to door in a Ukrainian village. We did. We did, just because, and then we had a team there serving in a little village where we were trying to do some church planning. It never really took off there, but we had a Bible study in that village. And anyway, we have a long history with Ukraine. Joey Cater, the Cater family, a long history at Calvary. Art Cater's been a deacon many, many times. He's been a chairman of deacons. His son Joey had gone to the Ukraine on one of those trips and ended up staying there. He really wasn't sent to the IMB or anything. He's one of those guys, young guy, in his 20s, single, going, I think I'll live here.
Yeah.
And he went back and wanted to be part of church planning and Bible studies, got involved in a church, became a missionary of Calvary in a very real sense, living in the Ukraine. We've had people support Joey. We've supported Joey. Joey's been back here to share many times. He ended up getting married to a beautiful Ukrainian girl, and Yulia is her name. They have 2 children. They're often back at Calvary. And many of you are asking about them. They were trying to get out of where they were to flee. It took them several days to get across the border into Poland, but they are safely there now. And I believe we are bringing them back here for a time, and so they will be refugees. They really had to flee their home.
Wow. And
they will be refugees with us here at Calvary for whatever time they need to be. And there may be others before this is over. We are already planning trips to Poland to minister to refugees. I talked with Dr. Colton, our international missions pastor, about that yesterday. We're already in contact saying, hey, do we need to send teams? I know thousands of churches in our network are thinking the same thing. How do we take care of refugees? How do we serve? So you asked me, I got into all that. How do we pray?
Yeah, and I just want to put a quick note on that. So if you were a part of the service this weekend, we specifically mentioned Joey and Yulia as the family that was trying to go out of Poland. They were in a long car line, so
they got out.
If you're wondering, that sounds like that is the same
family,
and they have gotten to Poland, and we are now
they're bringing them to Clearwater. Somebody told me they'd be here by the end of the week. Which,
wow!
I hope that's true.
Praise God.
They might be here Sunday. I don't know, but when they are, we'll at some point recognize them and pray over them, and they'll be a symbol to us, more than a symbol, reality of the crisis.
Right.
This beautiful young family, caught in this global crisis. But when I pray for those suffering like refugees. I pray that but I pray for Christians to be strategic. I pray for the churches there to have courage. Paul often in his prayers said, pray for me that I will have boldness. Pray for me that I'll have courage. Pray for me that I'll make much of the gospel. And let's pray for churches in the Ukraine that they will be filled with boldness, courage in their hour of difficulty. We have seminaries. We have a Baptist seminary in Odessa, I believe in Lviv also, and probably Kiev. I know those major cities. We have some seminaries. We have churches that I've preached at. There, preached at a church in Odessa, a couple of churches in Odessa, as I recall, preached at a church in Lviv. And so there are churches that, and some of those pastors I haven't kept up with over the last decade or so. Some of them I had, and so some of their names I still know, and I pray for them. So you just pray for the people. And if you don't know how to pray for the Lord's will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. As we learned last week in Revelation 9, those prayers matter.
Right.
Every prayer matters.
Right.
Every prayer ascends to the throne of God. It's as if God keeps those prayers. It's as if they become an incense that will one day be answered fully and finally. So our prayers matter.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for sharing all that. And it really is. I mean, as in the walls of Calvary really felt that story of Joey and Yulia, that it represents. I think I saw a number of, it was several hundreds of thousands that have already evacuated Ukraine. So you think about just every one of those as a family, as a story. We're hearing families being separated. Heard that story yesterday where the women and children were able to leave and the men were staying behind. So again, I think you got to navigate these waters. We're all dealing with so much. We all have stuff going on. You can't just take on all this anxiety and anguish that's going on all over the world. But it's certainly worthwhile. It should drive you to pray. I think that's the big thing. It should drive you to be praying for this situation. I was struck, even as you were just sharing, you think about our history here at Calvary really feeling this relationship with Ukraine and how we were able to go and have mission trips and be public about those missions, not necessarily having to get around in secret. Well, this is not the case in Russia. We know our Russian brothers and sisters deal with a much different situation over there. So this is what they're facing, is religious freedom that they have enjoyed being now in jeopardy. There's so much to this that we just want everyone to know that we're standing with our brothers and sisters over there. We're praying for them, and I know we would encourage everybody to do the same, however that looks. And it's why I think stuff like these Wednesday night prayer times are so important, to carve out time to pray as a church family, campus by campus, those type of things. So thanks for sharing some of that, Pastor. Any more, just any last thoughts on that situation as we kind of close out here?
Well, we will be keeping our Calvary family involved. Our network, which is our mission board network, has a relief arm that is, it's kind of a partnership between our North American Mission Board, our International Mission Board. And by the way, these are moments where you realize the value of being in a network.
Yeah.
That you don't have to go, well, who do I give to? Where do I go? We have a missions network, and that's accountable to our churches, that involves our churches. And Sin Relief has become, in the last few years, the name used for the joint effort between our North American Mission Board, our International Mission Board, that involves itself directly in relief efforts. Sometimes you hear about disaster relief, but it's a coordinated effort. Kind of the big umbrella is called Sin Relief. So when you see things happening in America, and you hear about Baptist volunteers that are going to that. We're one of the biggest in the world in dealing with disasters. Sin Relief is kind of the national brand organizing and kind of strategizing with all these various groups. And they do this internationally. And so they will be doing a great number of humanitarian projects. If you want to give somewhere, Sin Relief Network, maybe we can put the link in the notes.
We'll put that in the notes,
Sin Relief, you can follow them online, Twitter, or Facebook, whatever, Sin Relief. There's all kinds of media outlets, and you'll see reports about what will be going on. Obviously, it's a very rapidly unfolding situation. We don't know the most strategic ways yet, but if you want to give, you can give there. When we see specific ways that will make a big difference, we will come to the Calvary family. Again, none of us know where this is going. None of us knows where this will be in a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if it's a long-standing crisis. A lot of people assumed Russia would just race through the Ukraine, and by now they would they would have occupied it. But even then, it's going to be a long struggle. But they haven't. The
Right.
news is they have not raced through the Ukraine. It has been far more of a fight, I think, than they anticipated. And so I have no way of knowing. That analysis is far beyond us.
Yeah,
Can the Ukrainians hold? Would the Russians begin to look at the cost of that and pull back? I don't know. I pray for peace. I also pray for justice. And, I pray for the Lord's will to be done. And so we'll keep the Calvary family informed of what you can do to help. And, I've already heard some talk about, thousands and thousands of refugees, that some of them may have the opportunity to bring some to America. And maybe as a church family, there will be more than one refugee that we have an opportunity to help. And we'll keep you informed on all that. We're not unaware of it. We're looking at it. Our missions people are looking at it. And I know we will have the right strategy in place right away.
Yeah, definitely. Good word. We will keep everyone informed. We will put that Send Relief link into the podcast notes. You can head directly there from the notes. And it was a little bit more solemn of a podcast today, and we hope that maybe even after you're done listening today, just take a moment to pray, because we know how especially here in America, we know how the news cycle works and things come and go and stories change. Just hoping you can keep the people of Ukraine in your mind and in your hearts as they're walking through this. And don't get distracted by wherever this story tends to go, because there are people suffering in the midst of this, and that's who our hearts are with. So please continue praying for them. What I'll also do is put that the prayer guide that we put out there. Again, some of the information is already a little outdated because Joe and Yulia's situation has already taken a turn for the positive in their case. But we will put that info on there, so if you want to be praying for them, you can, or just the whole situation, that gives you a little guide you can work through. But thanks for listening. Again, hope you spend some time praying for the people of Ukraine. And we'll be back with another episode here very soon.